But we're gonna need some.
What's your second?
Alright,
That's a
okay,
huge
yeah,
amount, too.
I'll continue, just cause it'll be good to immerse
See,
in
Jamie
all
will
of
be there
it.
too.
Sidekick.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was part of the original, since Steve
Yeah.
has left us, I was part of, we usually meet at the town hall and try and do it opposite budget, so that it's not.
Yeah.
So you're gonna be on as well?
Yes,
Perfect,
I'll stay on
that's
that
good,
too.
yeah, cause a little bit of.
So that will have two budget and planning,
continuity.
yeah, well, that will help what
Yeah,
we've
'cause
talked
you've been
about,
there
and I
already,
have
so,
notes, so, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Alright, so, that's the CIP, so as far as, that kinda ties into our goals as far as ensuring we're saving correctly for that. The other goal we sorry, let me go back there. So the other thing we talked about last meeting was department surpluses, kind of having, which would have to be warrant articles to say any department surpluses could roll into the CIP accounts or our capital funds. So helps motivate departments to try and act fiscally responsible, and that way it helps go towards their purchases.
By act fiscally responsible, you mean spend less?
Spend less, but really think about it, and then it
But it-
actually benefits their programs in the long run.
But rolling the fees over also encourages them to budget more.
Well, yes, that's a possibility.
It's your job to say no.
So that's where I think we have to come in and say, so let's really look at your budget, what are you doing here? You know, we're not gonna increase budgets in the hope that it will roll into that, and that's where I want to be clear with folks that we're really looking, the town has spoken in our last meeting. And I think we all agree to, living in the town, we can't keep affording these increases constantly. That we wanna cut budgets, we're not gonna tolerate them continuously to grow and to feed these CIPs. We have to be smart with how we're managing our money, to make sure we're getting our important things met, and when we can find ways to support reductions, it can go into purchasing the needed equipment in the future that is done appropriately and not extravagantly.
It also suppresses the need to, oh, we got money left in our budget, let's buy something.
Well, that's the other thing, is that, yes, like, you know, how many, whatever, exactly, that you're just not spending money to spend money, that it's done frugally and
But
appropriately.
that could be done properly too, is if you're gonna buy something now, money that would otherwise lapse and not put it in next year's budget. Like, that's what I think John really should have done with his highway budget, instead of going so high this year, but.
I would wholeheartedly disagree, because I think if you budget properly and you have a solid plan, like if he has culverts to do every year, and he's got, I figure about 10 culverts a year, what have you, that should be well budgeted. You shouldn't just shoot for the moon and then try to just figure out how to spend that money later on or towards the end, and I get what you're saying, you have some extra in the budget, and you can spend it now, it's not gonna get any cheaper. But I think if you got proper planning and you find some savings during the year, this is kind of the way to incentivize people to, or department heads to get to the end of the year. And if you've got a gap in your budget, say you got 5% or whatever, there's no rush to spend it. You know, there's for the reason that you're talking about. If you don't need to spend it, I mean, yeah, you're going to need those items next year anyway. But if you've properly planned, it's going to be in your budget for next year. So if you just get to the end of the year, there isn't this rush to spend that last 5 or 10%, which is potentially the case. Then yeah, I think that's the incentive. It's really not the incentive to cut; it's the incentive to just not spend unnecessarily right at the end. I think that's a smarter way to do it.
Okay, so let's look at the practical considerations here of putting it into the expendable trusts. That's what we're talking about.
So Dick brought up the selectmen's meeting, and they briefly touched on it, they didn't go too much into
Well,
They didn't sound opposed to it, but logistically it might be a little cumbersome, but.
yeah, because those are all town meeting expenditures, right?
Yep.
Not to expend a trust fund, no.
To fund them there.
To fund them, yeah, but not to spend it.
Well, it depends. Some of them do
Next
have
year's
agents
warrant,
to
you have to have
expend.
articles to
Yeah.
put that money in.
Right.
If the agents to expend are the select board or somebody other than town meeting, then yes, you're correct. But if the agents to expend are town meeting, then you have to have a warrant article to put in and a warrant article to take out.
You need a warrant article to put it in anyway.
Yeah,
Well,
but I
right.
was just saying you have to have a warrant article.
We have to be
allowed
able
also.
to get it out too, right?
I would have to say in regards to like with the leftover, what's remaining, it would be beneficial for department heads as well as for us for the budget committee. Like where last year we weren't asking for 5 months to have like things that were paid in June reflected in the budget and they weren't done until January of this year. So like the insurances, things like that, they weren't even put in the budget until January. So like it looked like some of these departments had $100,000 plus in their account, but once all those were taken out, they didn't. They only had like maybe $40,000 left. That would be beneficial to actually have an accurate amount reflected. So if like these bills were paid in June, actually have them reflected in the budget instead of waiting until January to reflect that. That would actually be really beneficial for department heads as well as us to
So
see
what
exactly what they
happened?
have.
So I'm not understanding what.
Well, like last year, like
Yeah.
yeah, property insurance, liability insurance, vehicle insurance, none of that was taken out until January of this year in any of the budgets last year.
Get the budget,
Okay,
think of
okay, I
something
get
like
what you-
NHMA dues,
Right.
which is a one-shot deal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and they
so
were all
some-
paid in June, I think it was, but
So
it
this
wasn't
year,
reflected.
this year, they've already been done,
Yeah,
and part of it was trying to figure out the actual cost for each.
breakdown, yeah,
Cause they found the numbers, Primex will give you an allocation sheet. And it basically spits out by department, how many vehicles you have and the cost of everything, and I went through and like, I'm like, oh, these numbers are all out of whack, whatever. And it all depends on who before me calculated it how, whatever, so, but she's done that already for this year, which is good.
okay.
Yeah.
I asked about, the selectman asked about the transfers from the expendable trusts and capital reserve funds.
Yes, cause that,
And those haven't been done yet because of cash flow, which tax bills went out today, by the way, everybody. The vice president
Oh, boy.
Okay.
So, as you know, when it comes time for bills to go out, our cash gets pretty, and when the schools
Low.
send you invoices at $200,000 a whack, you know.
right.
But that's a smart way to do it, right? Cause if you don't have an impending expense coming out of that capital reserve as a result of town meeting or what have you, funding it from the town meeting vote, delaying that until you have the cash to do it and not getting a TAN is
Right.
definitely
Yeah.
smart. Yeah, that's, I like that. No, I didn't realize they'd done that.
Yeah.
So those transfers need to be done, which I'm assuming hopefully will get done pretty soon once we start getting money from them.
Mm-hmm.
Start paying down the TAN. But I'm trying to think of what other expenses would have been, that's mostly it, right?
Yeah, I think it was just those,
Yeah, so those were
Yeah.
done, which is good.
yeah.
But now, that was just a matter of me going through and calculating them all and saying, this number we're going with,
Yeah.
this is the best.
So the plan here, the way I'm thinking it is budget closes, you look at what's left, and you write warrant articles to move that money
Into,
that'll be approved in town meeting, so you've got until town meeting basically to figure out the numbers.
the numbers.
Is there a cap on what can be?
Put into,
Yeah.
It's all gonna lapse to the unassigned fund balance, and the selectmen can use that to either pay down the tax rate or fund warrant.
Right.
right, and that's why we gotta be in absolute agreement with the select board on this process, because if they take that unassigned fund balance and pay down the tax rate with it, then there's no money to put in the capital reserve as promised to the department heads. So
Yeah.
it's gotta be,
Which I'd kind of like to get away from anyway until, so we can stop taking out 10.
yep,
But, I mean, the unassigned fund balance is really an imaginary number, if you don't have the cash flow in
Right.
there, you don't have the cash flow in there.
well, and one of the things too is if we don't have our audits done, you can't spend that money.
Right.
So if you have unassigned fund balance that hasn't been audited, you can't spend what's in there. So we're spending money from years ago.
Right.
And we're gonna be caught up soon enough, so everything will be on the same timeline, so that should start to work out much better.
We're hoping that online property tax payments will start to help the cash flow issue a bit.
Speed up payments coming.
Last year, we were really late on getting the tax rate set, so that pushed everything back, so we didn't really get a good view at it.
Mm-hmm.
But we're hoping that with online payments, the money's gonna come in faster.
Because people
And
would
really-
rather do that than write
Really,
a
the
check and
selectmen,
mail it.
it's the same thing of if you pay down the tax rate or pay down a warrant article, it's the same at the end of the day, it just looks different, you know, because you're not giving it back directly, you are giving it back to taxpayers.
I think too, this, the surplus being transferred into the capital reserve is not going to be universal across the board, right?
Right,
Because like welfare department, they don't have any capital reserve.
Right,
So
right.
that would just go back into the general fund. The highway department actually has multiple capital reserves, so if they had $50,000 left over, you probably be working with the CIP, the department head and the select board, deciding where does the 50 go? Does it go to the highways and streets? Does it go to the highway department, CRF? You know, one is for roads and streets, one is
Yeah.
for equipment, you know, and
Yeah.
how do you wanna do that? So I think it's not gonna be universal across the board, but it will definitely be in some of our bigger departments, I think it will be generally helpful.
Mhm.
And I think it'd be a pretty easy process to navigate between December 31st and town meeting and the warrant.
Hopefully.
Like, I think a perfect
it
one
would
would
be.
be the reassessment, take whatever's left over in the assessing budget every year.
Yep, right,
That's not
exactly.
gonna hurt anybody.
Yes, if you've got, yes,
Whether paying
yes,
Avatar.
exactly, yep,
Right.
yep, put it in,
Ideally,
put it
there
into
won't be
the,
much in there anyway, because we
Mhm.
calculate it properly.
yep, but if you do have some, you put it into the reassessment plus whatever CIP is doing, and it might offset CIP. If CIP is properly built and you have the right amount of money going into that fund for our 10-year assessment or our 5-year assessment, wherever we're at, and you know that you're good with that, then the money going into it, you won't have to. So you won't have to fund it from the CIP, you'll just fund it from the surplus, or just leave it alone, one or the other. So,
Yep.
But yeah, if the select,
you'll have
the
choices.
selectmen aren't on board here, then
Yeah,
Right.
no, it's their warrant, so if they're not on board, then it's a
Well, yeah,
done deal,
they
so.
own all the warrants, really.
Yeah.
the whole thing with the TAN is it'd be nice to not rely on those, cause, yeah, we're paying down the tax rate $200,000, but then you're taking out TAN and paying 40 or 50 grand.
Well, right, if we can avoid that.
And I asked the auditors about that, they said towns are starting to use them less and less, and I was like, you know, how do we get to the point where, one idea that came up recently that I need to investigate is, you know, we have all this money, like, what I'm really thinking of right now is the grant funding from the state that's sitting there collecting and making good interest money,
Mhm.
but like, why can't we borrow from ourselves for that cash flow? Cause really, the one issue we have every year is mid-December when the county wants their $500,000.
Yep.
That's what it is every year.
Yep.
So why can't we just take part of that, borrow from ourselves,
Mhm.
once the tax bills go out, we start getting the money in, we put it right back in.
So it's like a loan from
Right,
You know, cause we're sitting on millions of
401k
dollars in these
loans,
accounts,
yeah.
why can't we borrow from ourselves?
you take it out, you use
Can it
it,
be
you
done?
can
Well,
repay
I-
it.
I need to ask.
Yeah, well, and I think the idea is you would just have enough in surplus to, you know, in the general fund to just handle it, so. So just so you know, Troy didn't start taking out TANs religiously until probably 2018, somewhere around there. Before that, Janet was like hardcore about,
Dollar and dollar out.
yep, and she I mean, what do they say, like 8 to 30% surplus or something like that is the standard, is a broad range.
5 to 7.
Right, it's this wide range of what you might wanna keep, and it's
It's a
5 to
guideline.
17 of the operating budget,
It's a
so.
guideline too. so-
Yeah, it's just a guideline, it's not a law or anything, so you can pay right down to this 5% hanging around,
mhm,
and then you need a TAN because you don't have enough cash flow to pay the bills when the big bills come in, because the taxes come in after the big bills come
We're
in.
like 4 or something right now.
So, yeah, so I think, so just so you know, we were able to do it, not all that long ago, so, but we also had, you know, cash hanging around, and I think Dick's thought process behind it was, don't keep the taxpayers' money, give it back to them, you know,
Yeah.
don't hold on to it for the future, but if you're gonna spend $50,000 in TAN interest, because you gave it back to everybody,
then everybody's paying money anyway.
exactly, so,
Mhm, yeah,
it kinda makes no sense, but.
right,
Alright, the other
mhm,
question I have is, should we restrict the line item accounts to which ones go into their ETF?
oh,
Limit it to what they have
certain, what
control
things
of.
they can actually, like,
Like line
why,
items,
By
for
line
what?
item, yeah.
what purpose would that
Yeah.
serve?
I think we're getting too much in the weeds there.
Well, I'm just curious,
I'm
what
it was
purpose?
just a thought, I mean,
Like
it's,
they can get money back if they don't buy so many Band-Aids, but they can't do it if they don't use the salt. I mean, which lines would,
yeah, I'm thinking things that they have no control over, you know, like maybe
You're not-
well, they're
heating
not,
oil.
and
You're
so
not
they're not gonna have
punishing
money
them.
left over, it's not a puni, you're right, it's not a
I
punishment
mean, they may have
thing.
money left over, but it doesn't go into the ETF, it goes into the surplus.
I think that's gonna make a warrant article a real nightmare. I mean, writing, think about
Sarah,
that.
I know. And the others.
If
I'm
we,
just, it was just,
no, I hear what
just
you're
something to
saying,
throw out.
but like, I feel like that might be quite a bit in the weeds, and then breaking that down might be
cause you
challenging.
do wanna have some surplus.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's why I was asking, is, can you only do a percentage or?
It's basically,
or not?
you're basically shifting your surplus to fund capital reserves.
Right, and I think when we start grinding out the math on this,
Yeah.
you're gonna see that the surplus comes from a number of different places, and it may just work out on its own that there's enough surplus in whether it's welfare or places that don't need to be using the surplus, or the CIP has got plenty to cover that, and that surplus will stay in the fund so you don't have to get the tan, but it all kinda has to be worked out mathematically to figure out, you know, you almost have to run 1 year through it to
It's
see.
not gonna happen all shuffle out the first year.
It might not, you might look at it and go, you know, this doesn't really work, let's do whatever's left of your budget, we're gonna put 50% into your capital reserve funds, and the other part has to go into the general fund, because we need that to keep from getting a tan, so.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But I think there's some meat on that bone regardless. I
Yeah.
definitely wouldn't get granular within the budget as to, you know, what will go to where, should there be any left over.
Then you- yeah, then
I would do it more macro, do it
Yeah.
in percentages, and,
They need
Yeah.
to renew it first too.
Mhm.
They have to be on board too.
Well, right, everybody else has to be on board.
Yeah,
Right,
these,
I mean, yeah, this is just kinda like, these are our thoughts that we're gonna share with,
these items that we do strictly so we can spend money that's gonna be reimbursed.
like the revolving funds.
Yeah, the revolving things,
Like police details.
police details,
Transfer station, that's a special.
we have one for the ZBA that covers postage, but we get paid for the postage.
Right, so you're saying like
So
eliminate
it's-
those?
No, you have to have it, yeah, because they're,
I think it would kinda come out in the wash. I mean, that's where we've always had the issue with connecting those with the budgets, because you don't, it's not always well
but
viewed.
if you think about it, you put it in the budget, and you spend it, and it comes back.
Yep.
So you haven't really spent it at the end of the year.
Well, you did though, because we have to have it in there to spend it, and then you could still have some left over. I mean, that's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna affect
But
our
at
purpose
the end of the
here.
year, the revenue comes in
Yeah,
to
Like
cover
building inspector.
what you spent.
The building inspector.
Right.
So it's basically a bookkeeping thing.
Right.
There's no
It
real,
is.
The
'Cause we
budget
have
that we're working on here is appropriated funds,
right,
and then there are different sources of income, tax money, fees,
right, they cover
selling hot dogs and hamburgers at the rec center, excuse me, the community center.
Yeah, I don't even know where that is.
another story. But yeah, so, right, I think, you know, we appropriated, spend it, and then in some cases it's reimbursed from other fees.
Just
Well, I
throwing
think
things out.
I think what Steve's basically getting at is it's non-tax revenue, right?
Mm-hmm,
So, anything that is a fee revenue, whether it's details for the police department, or fees down at the dump, or what have you, those are all coming in that are offsetting the associated expense, so,
Okay.
instead of just straight from taxation. I don't know if it's important to separate that out or not, but
Mhm.
We should probably look at that.
that's
and
essentially
see-
what you're getting at.
Yeah, see what it adds up to.
is it more than what we have appropriated, is that what you think?
Well, you're,
No, just see if it's even worth worrying about.
Okay,
You know, if it's a big enough sum that, hey, this is something, it matters.
okay.
Because basically, every year you, in theory, you put the money in the budget, you tax based on the budget, and then at the end of the year, you never spend the money.
one of the things that you're basically asking for, that we've been asking for a very long time, is to be able to see the revenue side
Right,
of the
that's
of
where
the
we
budget.
lose that,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think someplace in our records, we need to tag those line items that have revenue behind it. Just so we know, because that was one of the things that I had a hard time when I started out here, it's like,
We know in a roundabout way, it's that we just don't see it
On the
clearly.
state budget form, it has a revenue side, so, I mean, it's all a guess, compared to the budget's a guess too,
Right,
but you're putting in there what you anticipate to take in as revenue. So
Well,
like
and
building
there's-
inspector, we would have, you know, some sort of number there saying, oh, we
Yeah.
expected, taking X dollars for inspections. So when they do the formula to figure out your tax rate, how much money you need to raise from taxation, there is a number there, whether it's accurate or not, I mean, time tells most of the time,
But there's no compensation in the figuring out.
so you're really not taxing the people for an account that you're also putting in a revenue for to offset.
Okay,
Does that
So
make
that's-
sense?
alright, that's cool.
It's kinda like on welfare.
And if you have the wrong number, yes, you are, like, say we.
Right, you aren't,
say the
once
budget's
you're setting
10,
the tax rate, you've accounted for all of that revenue
Yeah.
that comes in, yeah, like the
An
special,
estimate, right,
yeah.
And I, yeah, the guesstimate.
If we have a budget of 10 and we estimate 10 to offset it, and you only get 5, then yeah, we have a $5,000 deficit that, you know, works its way out through the budgeting and surplus and all that process.
But if,
Historical information too.
okay, so let's look at the postage account for the ZBA, cause that might, okay. So, everything that goes into that, the applicants pay for,
Right,
okay? So no matter, if we use half of it, it really doesn't matter, because none of the other part went out.
mm-hmm,
You know, if we use half, the other half never got touched.
right,
Nobody ever wrote a check for it or, you know, spent any of it. So there's no liability. You know, it doesn't mean that we ran a deficit. It's like the opposite.
right, so it's reimbursed what you did spend.
But if you think about it, throughout the year, that's getting spent and reimbursed. Actually, it's getting reimbursed and spent.
Mm-hmm.
We don't spend it until we have the money from the applicants. So it's really like not doing any, you could set it pretty low and if it got updated properly, it would work.
Yeah, but that's just not the way municipal budgeting works though, right?
Yeah.
Cause you have to
Yeah.
raise and appropriate the funds in order to spend it, even though you have enough to offset it. It's a little bit like the police detail is the best example of it, because it's basically, literally every dollar we spend is covered by the money coming in.
Right.
But you cannot spend it without raising and appropriating it at town meeting, so, but
It's all done bulk over the year. then. It's
yeah,
not-
and I think you're circling around the point a little bit though, is, in those departments, you're not necessarily, anything left over in the budget is not one of those budgets that we're looking at putting into capital reserve funds, cause they just don't have one, ZBA doesn't have one, the special revenue fund
Right, right.
shouldn't have one,
Right.
for the police offset. So, yeah, so I think what you're circling around there is those are just the departments that we're not gonna, apply to this program. But as far as, we're still on goals here, one of the goals should be, we can't answer a lot of the questions that you have until we see the revenue side. And if we were getting an active reporting from the revenue side, that should be one of our goals, is to request and start to receive that information on a regular basis, is the revenue side.
Why don't we?
Well, some of it comes in, like for instance, and this is an Adam question, actually, the treasurer. So some of it comes in the way Janet used to do it. Let's use the transfer station as an example.
Yeah.
The money would come into the transfer station, they would bring it up to the town clerk's office, record the deposits and stuff for the month, and then they would go and deposit into the account.
Yeah.
So, and Janet would track all that on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So it's not like we have a point of sale system down there that's taking in the money and then making the deposit, and we, you know, whether it's QuickBooks or something like that, where we could just report out on this thing, so, it's very manual to track that account, and there's a number of those accounts, I don't know how many Adam has, but as far as revolving type funds, but there's a number of them, so that's part of it. Now the tax collection, that all happens through the tax collector's office, and that's all in BMSI, and that's reportable, she can print that off. I'm pretty sure she does all of her dog licensing and her marriage licensing, all of that stuff right within BMSI, and, or, Avatar, excuse me, I'm
Going back in
going
time.
back to, a little glitch. But anyway, so it's not all in one spot, I
Mhm.
guess that's the point.
Janet did really, really good detailed spreadsheets and we just don't have change.
Yes, exactly.
And nobody really wants to put the time in to do all that, which I
Yeah.
get.
And quite honestly, we should be building out those accounts, even if they're just macro level, in Avatar, on the tax collector side. We really should be. Like, if there's money coming into there should be an account for the transfer station revolving fund.
Yeah.
And the money should come in there, and it should be
And they're
recorded in
the-
Avatar.
They're the next department to take cards. They'll be in the card reader.
Yeah, I heard rumor.
Just cause they handle sometimes thousands of
I
dollars.
know. Yep, yep.
I don't know.
They bring it over to me, I go through it all and count it, and put it in a spreadsheet, and then give it to Sarah, she counts it, and deposit it. It's a lot
Yeah,
of
there's just a
money.
lot of cash floating
I've
around.
talked to other towns that when you
Yeah.
let their,
I know in Jaffrey,
Appendix,
they
that's
won't
what-
touch cash, you write a check.
or
They-
some towns
Really?
make you go to the town clerk and
Wow.
prepay there, I said,
We've-
no, that's way.
Yeah, we've had,
It's like, oh,
But if you go to the
three
dump-
bouts of fraud in this town, so.
Yeah, so if you go to the dump on a Saturday and you wanna buy a couple things back, you
yeah,
have a
we
debit
don't need
card.
that again.
Right, but we're paying a fee for that, aren't we? What are we paying percentage to use
Well,
the
the
debit
user,
card?
yeah, the user will be paying
What is
the.
it?
So the card owner, the bag purchaser will be
It's
paying
like you
the,
pay your water bill online now, or your property tax.
so it doesn't,
And then the department itself will pay $50
I don't
a
know,
month.
I mean, and that's
For the
everywhere,
reader.
just, you know,
Every year.
alright.
But
Alright,
But you have the check option, and you still have the, you know, you can do money orders and all that stuff. I've been
money
at,
orders, yeah.
I've been, it's old school, but the people that
Some people
rely on
still do
cash, they do it.
So I use
Yeah.
it.
Still do it.
You don't wanna take Bitcoin?
Alright, okay.
Anyway.
Getting too much over here, Steve.
But I'll let you know the revenue report.
Alright, so that's a good goal.
One step too
Understanding the revenue side, I think would help everybody in the town understand how, and the whole, I think education around the whole appropriation of funds and how it's important to be in the budget, but some of them have income sources that come in to cover it is
Right,
Would be-
that aren't right out of the taxpayer's pocket.
exactly, that I think is helpful thing to understand.
Yeah.
Now, when we say like a regular basis, how often are we talking? Like
For what?
every meeting that we have, or like every other meeting?
Sorry, for what?
For like regular basis to get that report, like are we talking every other meeting, or like every meeting?
If we were,
What are we talking here?
if we were asking for, that from Janet, it would have been monthly.
Monthly, okay,
Yep, very easy to do a monthly report, so,
Okay.
yeah.
alright, what kind
Like,
of?
something that gets sent out if you guys aren't meeting in the summer or something.
Yes, I would,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think
Yeah.
that would be really helpful to
To
know,
look
and then
over.
it'll also kind of see how the
Yeah.
tracking of things.
Yeah, you see the in and out of the money,
Right.
right?
Yeah, when the busy times are, when
Yeah, I
it's
don't
not,
see
yeah.
why we can't.
There's lots
I
of,
mean, it's probably not gonna be as great detailed as service, but.
well, you know what,
Give
it's
us
Any-
hours.
okay,
Give
any
us hours.
work-
we'll
Nothing.
shoot for the stars and hit the moon, right?
But in reality, I mean, even if you had the month total deposit
Yeah.
for, and it was for this account, that would be, you know, that'd be something, so.
Yeah, we
We'll
gotta
work on
start
that.
somewhere,
We'll get there.
alright,
Yeah,
So-
that's all you really need.
we've got our CIP going, we've got a goal for revenue. We'll look towards the selectmen, see if they are on
Yeah,
board with
They
this,
mentioned the 10% too,
the 10%, like a.
and told to cut. They're not totally convinced it's gonna be feasible, but.
Well, you know what, again, you know, we want, everyone's trying to save money in life in general, because nothing's getting cheaper, so it's not just personally, it's within the town as well, and it all affects us personally, so this is a goal for everyone.
I think if we go about it the right way, and not the way,
I don't think
When
we
it's
go
out.
10% and say, you need to cut your budget 10%, but we need to help people look at their
Lower.
budgets and go, okay, let's look about this
also,
with a scalpel.
Depending on how the
That's
health
what I would say.
insurance plays out too, that might.
That will help,
Could be a
But in
chunk.
order to cut the town budget 10%, you need to eliminate it,
what,
the health insurance.
well, we're
Well,
not
I don't
doing
mean
that.
just that, but
But I mean, if you
but
want.
if they make a significant change in that, you know, there's a lot of savings.
Yeah, you wanna talk
I
about
think
that a
this,
little bit?
That could
this
be
is
5% of
crazy.
your.
These numbers are crazy for health insurance.
Right.
Can we talk a little bit about this since it's in the packet?
well,
Cause
I don't know, what's,
are we
what's
definitely?
Jamie saying?
Well, no, I think, yes, it'd be interesting to talk about the numbers,
If
I don't
we're
think we
done
have
with the other
information on it. Like, I think that's the problem with the health insurance, these are the crazy numbers,
This
that,
is how it
yeah.
is currently.
But where are we as far as looking at other options that are less
So-
expensive?
So what happened was currently in the State House, there were bills proposed to drastically go after risk pools, and
Ooh,
things were so bad that the Health Trust Executive Committee got together and took a vote before the bill even went anywhere, and they said if it passes as is, December 31st, we're full time shop, we're done. Which would mean like 300 towns and school districts in the state would have no insurance, because right now, there's New Hampshire Health Trust, School Care, and then there was a third party who's already gone belly up. And the unfortunate thing is when you talk to a lot of schools in towns, they have blinders, tunnel vision, like if you mention anything outside of the norm and these plans, like they don't wanna talk to you about it, which is unfortunate. Got an email today from Health Trust and they've, you know, it's like sausage, you know, they amended the bill, it's gone back and forth between the House and the Senate. And it sounds now that everything's all rosy and they're all happy again, so it sounds like they're not going anywhere. But the selectmen wanted to look into this regardless of the result of that. If they had gone through and they were going away, then we'd have a choice. Us and 300 other towns would have to find another option, but it sounds like they're gonna survive. But, the problem with our current insurance is that, yes, it's really, really good, there's no deductible, I pay $10 for a prescription, I pay $20 to go to the doctor. A lot of our staff's young, and
That's a deductible.
you cut a check for $1,300 a month for my insurance, 85% town, 15% me. And whether I use it or not, they're cashing that check.
Okay, so the first question is, these numbers is the total outlay for insurance.
Yep.
That's not the actual cost, because some of that is revenue offset by the 15% that you're paying.
It's in there.
The third line down, the total monthly cost, the bold for the town is, that's the town cost.
Okay, let's just look at annual for now. Okay, total annual cost, does that include the,
So that 277 number is the premiums plus the insurance buyouts.
So that's,
That's the
But-
town
but-
cost.
So that's 24,261 times 12 plus the buyouts, yeah?
okay, now, right now,
I mean, 2621 times 12 plus the buyout, sorry, I
okay,
misspoke.
so that's the actual. I just happened to be, just before I got this email, pulling budget numbers on that same stuff. I came up with 295 budgeted for health insurance and 10,000 for buyout. Comes out to 305 in the budget.
for where? We were looking at all the budgets for that?
Yeah,
Like just going through?
that's across the whole town.
Is this our true cost? So
Yeah.
are we talking about true cost
This is
versus budgeted cost?
straight from the invoice.
So,
And-
But yeah, the
Going-
budget reflects the.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so how'd you come up with 305 and how'd you come up with 277?
Well, I was
guess
looking at the
that's-
budgeted amount. He's looking at the actual monthly spend.
But the
So
budget
like-
amount was
so-
derived from the actual spend.
So department like the PD.
Yep.
They asked for an additional full-time officer and they partially funded it because we knew we weren't gonna hire somebody January 1. And now it looks like they're not gonna get anybody certified anyway, and you hire uncertified, you're talking a year of training.
Also, you had a whole.
So there was also an insurance line, you don't know if you're gonna hire somebody who's single or
Right.
person.
Yeah,
You
right-
can't
right
ask
now
that,
you're not-
you
you're
can't
not
judge
so
it.
you were getting numbers from that?
This is straight budget. His is,
Yes, his is
actual.
really,
And I'm not,
the
I'm
real
not
one.
saying that you're wrong,
Right.
I'm just
But that
saying
could be
that
where
this
the-
is what it
it's gotta
could
be
be.
where the,
Okay,
That's,
because A, we don't have somebody in that position now, and B, we don't know who it is, what they're gonna,
right,
and there's other
Yeah, you-
positions that are empty right now too.
yeah, like.
Yeah, you could hire a full-time person today and they could be a, family plan and that will change
That
these
would-
numbers.
yeah,
Yeah, change your numbers.
Or they could be budgeted for a family plan
And I
to
don't remember
replace them
what
and,
Dave and I budgeted for, I'm assuming we went for the worst case.
Right, it might be fine on the budget side, but as far as the actual expenditure here, it would change because that's not accounted for,
Right.
correct?
right.
okay, so I've got budgeted 295 for health insurance, 12,300 and change for dental, 166,000 for retirement, 97,000 for social security, 620 for life insurance, 6,807 for disability, 10,000 for buyout, for total employee benefits of 580,000. I mean, social
So-
security benefit, maybe,
But we can't really do anything with social
No.
security,
No.
that's,
No.
Yeah,
And retirement. you can do-
and retirement, that's like, we
Unless the
can't
town
touch
voted-
that.
Once the town voted to, you can, some positions you can, police and fire you can't, but other positions you can leave it, you can offer an alternative. But that turns off a lot of people as they're looking for jobs. and they find
Right,
out that
we need-
somebody's
we
not
need
part of it,
staff.
then-
Just hire people over 65 on Medicare.
Well.
That
They're not,
works.
they're not good ditch diggers.
I have a question for you, Jeremy. I think I asked this last year. Do the employees pay anything Oh, their insurance? Like
Yeah.
a,
Health, 15%, health and dental. Town pays 85, we pay 15.
This is just health, this isn't dental in here, right? Am I missing?
Well, dental's really.
Well,
it's
no,
not
I'm just
big.
saying, but this is
Yeah,
just
it's just
health,
health.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, not low, long-term
Chances are, there's not
disability,
gonna be a
no.
lot of money to be saved in dental either way.
Well, right, I'm just saying, that's what we're looking at here,
Yeah, you can play around with that number. Our buyout is higher than almost anybody.
yes.
Most towns are like, what?
well,
They
what is
usually
it,
offer
$5,000
3 to 5.
now or something for buyout?
Now it's 10.
It's 10.
But-
For us, but
but-
not everywhere else.
I'm a single plan, and that's 13 grand a year, so even if I didn't take it and you gave me a $10,000 check, you're still
You're still
banking
sick.
3,000.
See, the school offers me $5,000
Yeah,
for buyout.
we're way higher, but
So
we'd
our
have- we'd have
other,
to look at that number.
have other towns looked at their health insurance and gone with different plans then, that are less expensive?
So I went to the.
I don't think we wanna be the only Flint town that does that.
We do wanna get ahead of Health Trust
I think-
going belly up.
I think a lot of towns aren't willing to have their conversation to start with, which is a problem. But when I went to the annual meeting last year for Health Trust, which is probably one of the most boring things I've
Oh, I don't
ever
know.
had. But the sense that I got from the room was, it was a lot of the larger towns that have unions that were speaking now.
Mhm.
Like
They were just
Manchester.
saying that, like Lebanon, not like cities, but larger towns or whatever, but they were saying how, cause they have to, with their
Yeah.
agreements, they have to,
Yeah.
you know, usually you wanna take something away, you gotta give something or whatever, but, they were just, you could just tell from the way that they were talking that they were hurting and feeling it, and they were looking at other ways, they needed to look for other ways to
Has
operate,
anyone?
'cause
Has anyone done any, and has any municipal?
I know Wilton was with, so it used to be Health Trust,
Yeah,
School Care, and then the third was called Interlocal Trust.
yeah,
And the other ones went belly up. And
Right.
he just frantically out of nowhere had to find a new insurer and went,
Yeah.
no time on the clock, and I think School Care took them on. But I don't know what their long-term plan is, but most towns, they won't even have the dialogue.
so
They don't
nobody,
talk about it.
no,
It's not an
so
option.
wait. So no other town has looked at their health insurance and tried to find a more
I'm sure there is,
affordable
I
way?
just don't hear about them, because there's not very many of them.
Okay. So we'll be kinda like,
But the idea was to maybe switch over to a plan with a higher deductible, but have the
Right.
town be willing to fund it. So then that way you're actually paying for insurance as they use it, not just cutting a check every month saying, here you go, Health Trust.
what is the likelihood of this actually happening? I mean,
I think it's pretty high.
for
I
us?
mean, we have to find the right fit, but I think the board's on board with that.
Okay.
From previous experience, I know there's options out there, abilities to do it, I just think most towns are so.
There's your goal.
Yeah.
That's a nice,
So I
that's a
have a
nice, that's a
meeting-
nice goal, right? Like, you have it all laid out right there, so when
You
you're,
have to pay
when you're
full
pricing.
price.
So I've been talking with
I
an insurance agent
bucks every
who,
time I go to the clinic.
insurance
I
agent,
know, it's different.
gave the
Yeah.
insurance
Yeah.
agent all of our information,
I got you
Yeah.
guys covered.
and she's, given me some quotes so far,
Yeah.
some
35
plans.
to 50 bucks. every
But I'm
time I
meeting
go.
with her,
Yeah,
meeting with her
Sorry.
Thursday,
To the doctor,
um,
regular
to
doctor.
kind of figure out how do we bridge that gap in between. So if we go to a high deductible plan, how do we fund in between so these
I have to
employees
look at my
aren't,
card and take a look.
right.
you know, if you totally switch it from no deductible to 5,000 deductible, don't help them at all. You're taking away, you're
Right.
drastically reducing your
Right.
benefit.
Look.
Well, I think a lot of us too, like who have insurance through different ways too, like, you know, that's kind of the way of the world right now, nobody has the gold standard.
Yeah, but I'm hopeful there's a way that the town can switch to a
Alright,
higher deductible
So
plan,
we'll-
find a middle ground to fund it and offset that.
I think,
Oh,
you
this
could-
is,
I think you find a higher deductible plan.
I never did get this year's car.
do you wanna show us what your insurance is, Steve?
No, because it's nice, it's changed.
Yeah, I think you can find a higher deductible plan and fund the plan for way less than what we're doing here. And that money rides in those accounts if they don't use it, so, you know, whether it's a health savings account or a reimbursement account or what
Right,
have you,
yeah.
so, yeah.
Alright, so we'll stay tuned to hear what comes out of that, but, you
Yeah,
know,
let's be a trendsetter on this one, honestly.
So my goal of the meeting is to have, you know, a few options to go to the board and say that it's just kind of.
Right,
alternative
yeah,
options.
yeah.
Cause I don't even know right now what it's gonna look like, and they don't know.
So,
It's my job to find out.
Okay,
when you said self-funded, you didn't mean actually pay for the claims. You meant pay for the insurance.
Up to the high deductible.
I didn't say so, I mean like, you know, switch over to a plan where you're actually paying out for services used, and not necessarily just cutting a
Right.
check.
But the term self-funded,
Right.
means that
Yeah,
they just bring the bills into the town and you pay.
no, you didn't, probably have a third party.
There's,
That was it.
I don't speak insurance, but it does sound that way. There's some weird juju magic how they manage it.
Cause years and
That's-
years ago, I worked for a place, we
Yeah.
had, our dental plan was bring us the bills, which
Yeah.
drove the doctors crazy.
It's,
I'm like, just build a company. They're like, oh, well,
Yeah.
what's your parents do? No, build a company.
so just keep in mind, when you come back to talk to us about this, we need it from on. Like in the idea of a computer, like from like step one, this is what I mean by this language, because there's a lot of strange language in the
Yeah.
insurance world.
I've already learned new plans and stuff that I
Yeah,
didn't know existed
yeah.
before.
So,
I mean, the other thing that I've seen done is you offer a range of plans and you give them X number of dollars a year
You pick what you want. yeah.
that you can use to fund the plans.
and a lot of companies do that.
Some
there.
places, some
So,
places
yeah.
will pay for your insurance, but if you have dependents, then,
Yeah.
you know, which I don't,
Yeah.
not saying we should go that way, but,
Right.
you know, just.
There's lots
But
of-
that way,
A lot of
if
people
you
that
wanted a
work-
better plan, there were better plans available, but you had to pay some out of pocket.
Right.
Yeah, we'll give you 5,000, you want a $60,000 plan, and,
So then it gives
We'll
you
give you
choice and
5,000 and 5,000 will buy this plan.
I mean, one of the bargaining chips of ours used that people working in the public sector is, you know, you're not getting rich and not making a lot of money, but your benefits are usually pretty good on the phone, so.
Yeah.
It used to be
But
that
then
way,
again, if
but
you're not using it-
It's not anymore.
If you're not using the insurance,
It's all
you know,
changed.
what are we paying for?
Right, huge money for people that don't need it.
Right.
Then there's two different health type accounts. There's a reimbursement account, which is
FSA or HSA or what?
the FSA and HSA, they're two different things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, the FSA is a flexible spending account, and if you don't use it by the end of the year,
You lose it.
you
But
lose
there's
it.
also a savings, there's an, yeah.
That's the
And this,
HSA.
there's an HSA where you can save it and it rolls over.
There's another one too there, I don't remember the
Yeah.
acronym.
Yeah.
Alright. Okay, well, we don't need to
And
be.
some of them are certain, you can only fund so much.
The insurance world.
I know, we're not gonna,
Yeah.
we are not gonna solve insurance here.
Yeah.
No, I'm just talking about
But
terms, cause
it's confusing, and that's what I'm saying, when you come back from like, how do I turn the computer on point of view with
Yeah.
the insurance, thing, so we
No,
understand.
and
Talk to
you-
us like we're
what do you do?
Right, yeah.
What do you do right now if somebody's on Medicare?
We have one retiree that has a separate plan. Pays through the town for our insurance. Some sort of supplemental insurance.
Oh.
Oh, interesting, alright, yeah.
So Jeremy, these numbers here on the bottom, that's per department?
That's currently what we're paying out.
Is that different plans?
Oh, yeah, that's part
Yeah,
of
you'd
the
have, you'd
issue
have
is
to look at
like,
the staff, yeah.
yeah. If they got a single, if you got three staff in one department and three staff in another department,
Okay.
one of them only has singles and
Like
the other one has all
Selectman's
families.
office, you have my single plan, and you have Abby and Sarah who both have the bio.
Okay.
And Sarah really wanted to switch this year, and before she got her raise, she was like, I honestly didn't know, she got a
She
term,
probably shouldn't be
but
talking about.
she's like, I honestly wanna switch, but I need the money, and I was like, yeah. That's
Well,
unfortunate.
we all need the money.
Well,
Yeah, but her plan right now with her dad is, you know, well, you
Yeah.
can stay on your phone.
Alright, right, yeah, there's a whole.
So this is the monthly premiums are
Yeah, up top.
single place, single, two,
Two-person
and then
family.
a family. And a family is 3 or more.
Some people do split, they do dental family and insurance single or two-person.
Insurance world.
It's a whole thing. Alright, so why don't we move on, cause we're not
I was
gonna.
gonna ask one more question, but go ahead.
Alright, one more question, Steve.
If they have other insurance, will these become supplementals if they opt in on them?
Do other insurance.
I don't think you can do that. I don't think the insurance companies will.
These weird
They
rules
used to.
that have-
They, yeah, it'll basically, I can say on that. Basically, if you have one and your spouse has one, theirs is their primary, yours is your primary, and theirs becomes your secondary.
So
Not
whatever,
all
whatever
companies
one
allow
plan doesn't
that.
Yeah,
pay,
if
you
it's
can
a
submit to
family
the other
plan.
plan.
There's
that
some
they
weird
want.
rules around
Not
that,
every
different
company do
businesses,
that.
and I'm not an insurance person, I just know
Like a
there's
couple working
different
for
companies have
different
different.
companies.
Yeah.
Different, yeah,
Yeah.
Or even
So,
the same
yeah.
company.
yeah.
I
Well,
can
yeah.
get insurance through the school. my
There you go.
husband can be the primary insurance carrier. I can get insurance through the school and use that. If
For
his
yours.
insurance doesn't, some companies won't do that.
The secondary insurance,
Yeah.
I don't
So
think
on,
you've
and
seen
so
that
on.
yet.
Yeah, well, it's something to, yeah,
Lots to learn.
there's
So-
so
Yeah,
But if they lose money,
many-
probably not.
that might raise the cost though.
Alright.
Yeah.
So,
Okay,
Well, it might be built in and you might be
we're
able to
done
save.
with that.
save
I
if
thought
you
people
don't
wanted to
use
be out by 7.
Oh, I didn't know we were under a time.
Hey,
Either.
Alright,
I
so,
know that.
Mr. Obert, are
Uh-oh.
you doing something with pie charts? A yes or no is okay.
Not yet, I haven't had, I started looking at it, I found a way to take the data that comes out of your reports
Uh-huh,
and make a nice, clean
a nice
spreadsheet.
pretty thing.
Ooh.
Ooh, nice, alright,
So I've got, that's a good way to get things in the database, and that's what I'm working on right here, to
okay.
get it
Alright,
across
so
all.
maybe next time we can throw it up on the screen, so whatever you have, we can just look at it and see, we can all ooh and ah at how beautiful it is.
Right now, it's
Not
not,
now.
it's not beautiful,
It's okay.
all of the line items just stacked,
Yeah.
sorted by the type,
Okay.
but it groups them.
Just
Alright,
fine.
So
alright,
that's,
well,
and
yeah,
I've got
that's
all the
where we all are at
advertising
the
in one
beginning.
place and all of that stuff, so that's
Nice.
a start.
Alright,
So in order to, establish whatever cut goal that we're looking at, right, like,
yeah,
because I envisioned this as, you know, town meeting is saying we wanna do a 10%, because they almost did it right at town meeting, then we haven't figured it out the hard way. So I was thinking we would start with a 10% cut across the board, right?
See
Like,
what it looks
like a mock budget of 10%. Do that as soon as possible so that we can start to theorize that amongst ourselves before we might look at it and go, holy crap, there's no way we're doing this, you know, so we might be at 5%, or we might be at 2%, or might be just, let's try to make sure the budget's even going into next year, so there's no increase. And that's maybe where we end up, but if we start at 10%, work our way up, or work our way down, we can at least explain at town meeting that we did that, went through that exercise, but we've gotta start there, and we probably have to start there soon, because if we do realize that, you know what, I think a 3% cut, budget cut is actually realistic. We need to notify department heads about that, we need to talk with the select board about that,
before
and it is the operating budget, so the operating budget belongs here, so if we're gonna be doing that, we need to be letting people know well in advance before we do it,
Right.
so.
So would you say the first step in doing this would be to go through and identify the stuff that we can't touch? That are sort of fixed up?
Yeah, that's what I would do, is I would go line by line and look at like yeah, I would look at it line by line and look at the things that are fixed costs. One of them might be that if the healthcare thing works out and Jeremy finds that high deductible plan, I guarantee you that's gonna be a nice chunk.
Right.
Huge
Just saying,
That
once
is
we
good.
have a more clear picture on that, we
Right.
could have 3 to 5%, I don't know.
What's the deductible now?
The health insurance stuff?
Yeah,
None, zero, it's awesome.
You know what I think?
It's so expensive.
It's like 1950 here in
I don't-
Georgia.
well, it's time to, you know,
I don't use $13,000
I
a year.
agree, I agree.
get rid of Flintstone and.
Yes.
I know, it wouldn't take
This
much
is-
to
this
use
is-
$13,000 worth of
This
insurance,
is what
but
we're talking about, like, we've got to get with like the current
Yeah.
practices.
years ago, I saw proposals of towns going from this to, like, basically after, the Affordable Care Act came out.
We must be the last town in the
People started-
state.
But
People
we're
started-
not.
people started
That's
figuring
what
out-
I'm saying. We're
People
People
not.
started figuring out how to work with the Affordable Care Act
You know,
law.
I think
I saw proposals for towns where they went from our health trust type plan to total switch to everything's like max deductible for everybody. And then I saw the math where, say you had 15 people, employees on your plan, the whole town. And in that one given year, every single plan maxed out their deductible, which we all know would never happen. You'd have a better chance of getting struck by lightning twice or buying the Powerball
Well,
twice.
during COVID, that
And
could
even with that math, the town would still save money
You know, the
paying,
bottom-
covering those deductibles.
The bottom line is we're at the health insurance industry mercy in the doctors and the hospitals. You know, you get one bill, they bill you this, but if you don't have health insurance, then you get a discounted bill. But which is a real bill?
Not always.
Actually, it's usually the other way around. If
You know what
get the
happens with
bill,
health
the
trust?
Insurance company pays this.
You know
and
what happens
wants
with
you to
health
pay
trust every
3
year?
times that.
So we get a letter from them every year saying how much ours is going up, and this is why it's going up.
Oh, that's where Mary was figuring out everybody's amount for the
What a
departments.
racket.
Okay,
I know, I
now
know.
I see what that is.
So that's what I'm saying, we're not gonna fix it here
No.
in Troy, but we we don't
No.
need to pay for
Yeah.
gold standard
No, no.
insurance.
Well,
Right.
the
So that's
interesting
what we're waiting to
Okay.
find out.
thing that I've seen
What
in
we can
insurance
do.
policies is the difference in the annual cost between several policies that look the same except have different deductible is the amount of the deductible.
Yeah, that is the variation for what you're paying for, yeah.
I mean, if you had one plan and say, okay, it's $1,500 deductible, let's say, and you wanted one with zero deductible, it cost you another $1,500 a year.
The spread out.
So I'm not sure that paying deductibles would actually save you any money based on that.
If you're not using it,
It's your job to
But
figure it
other
out.
than banking and
Jeremy's
direct
gonna
debit.
report back with some fabulous information that
Fingers
starts
crossed.
with stupid, so we understand it.
So I didn't mean to bring healthcare back up, but I think probably
Honest to God.
the way you wanna do it, Steve, is I would do by department, right? What does a 10% cut look by department?
Yeah.
Right, and
Right.
then that's gonna give us kind of a starting block. And then you start to drill down from there. That would be the first drill down I would do, and that would save you from drilling down right off the beginning, because I think it's gonna kind of expose itself as to how far we need to drill down to determine, if this is gonna work or not.
Yeah.
And we do know healthcare is one of the biggest components. What is that, 10% of our overall budget? 7.5?
Yeah.
Okay, so 7.5% of our budget is that. We're obviously not gonna be cutting all of that, but if Jeremy comes back early enough with some of the, projected numbers, right, cause you're gonna start talking about these numbers, those plans and prices are out there. Maybe we can then start to plug that in and see how that affects each of these budgets. Like if we actually end up saving this amount of money on healthcare, then we know that's gonna be the biggest chunk. What does that leave us to have to cut for the rest of that budget?
Right.
That's kinda how I would do it.
Now, going off of that, I was gonna say, when would be the next time we meet, and do we want to kind of follow how we have it set up, so we're not going through the entire budget all at once? We break it up into like how we are meeting for like water and library, would be the next ones we go through, and then we go through like historical,
Oh, I see
Cheshire, so we kind of break it up by department, so we're not going through the entire budget all at once.
So I
But that'll be a long
haven't
meeting.
thought about
You-
that, if that's okay,
Go
so
ahead.
I get what you're saying, but I don't think we have enough time for that.
That's what I was.
Okay,
So
yeah,
I would say that we wouldn't wanna drill down, we wouldn't wanna do line by line, that's what I was saying, just do by department budget as a
Okay.
macro number. You know, and then we take some of the big key items within that budget to
Okay.
try and see what we can cut with
Yeah.
those, and
yeah,
then move on, you know, so
Okay.
we can get through a whole bunch of the budget in
that's what I was
one
gonna
night,
say,
or
'cause
maybe
we
all
could
of
be
it.
here for a while.
And at the end of the dialogue,
But I would-
say,
I would
okay,
say
10%'s not realistic.
Focus on the bigger budgets.
Well, would be
Yeah,
the
well,
ones
yeah,
that
we don't
we're-
even, we probably don't even have to really talk about some of the smaller budgets, you take 10% out of the ZBA budget, and it's a non.
He's got his postage and that's
Right,
it.
Yeah.
right. Yeah, there isn't really anywhere to save in some of the bigger budget, or the smaller budgets
Right.
like that,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
I think the CBA is the smallest budget in town.
Yeah.
So, is
No.
there a
We got
way to like, who wants to look at, how do we
Industrial
wanna go about
development's a
doing
small
that?
one,
Yeah, that's what I was,
Okay.
how do we break it down? Yeah.
I thought Steve was hungry for this, and I would
Are
certainly be
you-
willing to help with whatever Steve wants me to help with.
I can help, but
do-
my technology expertise is not fabulous, but I would love to learn.
Yeah, just plan on the first half an hour just trying to figure out how she gets logged in.
Your volume was off.
I know, that was my fault.
We spent
That was-
26 minutes and
All
his
right,
microphone
let's
was
ease on the
off.
chairwoman.
My mic was off the whole time, I'm like, well, I hate to break it to you, but that was me, I'm typing
Which
through,
was
what the hell are you doing?
Which was a relief, but anyway, yeah, no, I would like to learn, but yes, I'm a little slow. Alright, so maybe we can kind of talk
Okay,
separately and see
Yep.
how that might work.
Yep.
Okay,
I'm gonna try to figure out who's got the biggest budgets and
okay,
Highway and PD.
budget cut subcommittee, Steve, Ben, and Jamie.
yeah,
do you wanna, like I said, go through the type of line items that are untouchable?
can we, I don't know, I do better live than on computer
Yeah,
meeting stuff.
I don't mind that,
If we
it's
wanna
time no
like,
matter what I do, so.
yeah, if we wanna get together and meet and kind of look at that, how we could make that happen technology wise, and then we can present it at our next meeting here and say, this is what we kinda looked at
That makes sense.
in a large large scale, like, I'd be open to doing
You
that.
want to get town hall approved?
Oh, okay, yeah, that would be great.
We would meet here if it's somebody here.
Well, if we go to town hall, we can have Jeremy.
Well, I'll come here too.
Oh, well, fine.
That's maybe mileage from the street.
I'll come pick you up.
So we'll work that out.
All right, we'll
sooner
work
than
out,
later.
yes,
Yeah.
and that way we can have that information. All right, do we wanna talk about impact fees? We don't have the select board here, cause they're kinda dragging it out, right?
What was the discussion about impact fees from last?
Impact fees is like when a planning board, like when a permit's issued for someone building something new,
Yeah.
it's like,
You
how
come
is it
in
gonna
or
impact
don't,
the
I know what
community?
they are, but
Oh,
what was
okay.
the discussion we had, like, what
So
were
happened
they
was-
contemplating?
The idea came up in
Putting it in
the 11th
place.
hour last year, and Nick's like, let's throw it in the warrant, and it's not that easy.
Yeah.
You have to go through the process, and it's really a combination between the planning board and select board.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they wanted to have a conversation with Carol, and the way her schedule worked, she was never gonna be able to come to a selectmen's meeting, so that's why we had the joint meeting a couple weeks ago, whatever, where two of the selectmen were there, Gigi couldn't make it, but, they just had a dialogue with her, and basically, a lot of towns are spending big money to have a consultant go through and make this pretty impact fee schedule and everything. I don't know if we need to get that done, but basically you have 6 years to spend the money, like, so you could establish an impact fee tomorrow, the next town meeting, where, you know, you build a new house and X amount of dollars is charged an impact fee, and it goes to, you have to dictate where it's gonna go. Like, some towns will do
Whether
just
it's for
school,
roads or schools
some towns
or.
will do divvy it up or whatever, but, so you have to say where it's going, how you're building it, and you have to spend it within 6 years, or you're supposed to give it back. And there's 2 different ways to do it, I don't remember all the details
Do
about
we
it.
have enough
I was gonna say, do
of
we
that
want
to
do
spend
that?
money on a fancy consultant and all the energy
Right.
that's gonna take to
Right.
put into it,
Well,
to have that make sense?
Kinda like the dialogue with the master plan, is
Right,
Southwestern Community, Services, or
Regional
regional
planning.
planning, so they're gonna come back with a quote for how much it's gonna be to look at our master plan,
is it gonna
reduce the
change
size
that
and
much?
edit it, and
Right,
we're just waiting for how big that's gonna be or whatever. So, yeah, the question of what it's gonna look like and what you're gonna charge, how much you're gonna charge and where it's gonna go.
yeah.
It's still, they just had their preliminary first discussion with Carol and planning board. But yeah, somebody's gonna have to sit down and figure out how much and where it's going, it's gonna have to go on next year's ballot.
Alright,
I mean, they're pretty common, but, there's a
Matt's
less
got-
strict way of doing it. And some towns have opted into that way, and apparently they're not actually following through with it, so it's kinda like a wasted effort, like they're not actually
we
collecting.
don't need to
anything.
burn money,
Right,
right,
we don't need to put effort into something we're not gonna do.
right. Matt,
So, a little update on that is that at this point in time, we are looking at working just with Carol, and there'll just be a little bit in addition to our consulting budget
Impact fees, or,
for master plan. That's one of the
did
correct.
you guys get a quote yet, or no?
They did not get us a quote yet, but
We're just.
we did, look for, instead of a quote for them doing more, just for, looking at the land use change since our last master plan update. And that was going to be about $700. And that would be,
For Carol?
that'd be through Southwestern. Actually, I think that Henry that's one of his departments.
Did he message you?
So we are working on just basically doing an update to the vision and the land use section. Those are the 2 required sections. The rest of it is optional.
Right.
And I mean, a couple weeks ago, I don't think it was at the one where Southwest came in, but in our discussions about the master plan update, it became apparent, at least to me, that the planning board did not really have any desire for change or anything. It's updating for the sake of updating.
Right.
So we believe that we can do this somewhat affordably. Again, that $700 number that we heard last time, and I think they're going to be,
Cut down the line.
yeah.
Did they talk about impact fees again, or no?
That we're not gonna really be touching that until we have the master plan update rolling. So I mean, I'm sure that we will bring it up, but it's just, it won't go anywhere.
It sounds like a next year project.
Next year or end of the year or
Yeah,
something, that we don't really have anywhere to go with it at this point in time.
Okay.
To be determined, so it's a potential additional revenue.
Well,
Right,
I like
yeah.
the approach on the master plan update, because frankly, it's just put on the shelf and collected dust since 2007, so.
Yeah,
Most
It's like-
people agree that it's pretty good.
Yeah, no, we had a great, I think we spent all kinds of money on it the first time around, and we've got a great master plan, and hopefully a lot of it's still, you know, still.
We're just anticipating the quote to be, I mean, they didn't budget anything for it to begin with.
exactly, and that, again, we're looking at it, and like our survey from last year, basically, people still felt the same way, that we were seeing no major changes, we're not. And again, that is looking from the board's perspective, listening to the discussion at the board, that's like, we're not wanting to make a major change for something, it's updating for the sake of updating, so
It's a good approach.
Good.
hopefully, this,
Sounds nice. Okay, all right.
Yeah, the updated master plan makes the CIP legitimate, makes the impact fees legitimate, so that's also,
It can roll
that's
over
also
the years,
key
yeah.
component to that, so.
How often are you supposed to update it?
And
10 years? Oh, so well over here.
Yeah, but if nothing has changed, then that's kinda silly to invest tons of money.
Exactly, that-
Right, there was the survey that came out, and if town folks are not thinking we need to do anything crazy, why are we gonna invest
Exactly, I
that
mean,
money in
that-
that?
one of our meetings there, that a member even said, well, how about we just feed it into an AI and
Oh,
so
yeah.
at that point in time, it becomes apparent that,
Yeah.
okay, we're not trying to change something because something's changing in the town,
Right,
that we're updating.
When Rhonda was going after the
Yeah.
generator grants, we had to update our emergency management plan, our hazmat,
right,
mitigation plan. Do you know what those plans normally do? We were in the show.
Yeah,
yeah.
that was good though, they did get updated, now they're,
But we don't want,
They
yeah,
go
we
back
don't
on
wanna
the
have another
shelf.
plan.
yeah, whatever, but you're actually legally required to update them, and I think
She
some
had
of
to
them
do
were,
it for a grant, so it's like.
yeah, so.
Oh, there we go, alright. I don't, anyone have anything in particular about the year-to-date budgets that they wanna point out?
I went right down through, and, I thought everything was looking pretty good, you know, just a.
Yeah, the end numbers.
Yeah, the end numbers were looking good, yeah, we're 41, as of this date, we're 41% of the way through the year, and, we have, in most departments, we have way more than 41% left, I mean, 60% of the budget left, so.
Yeah.
Thought it was good.
Excellent.
I went,
Steve?
just juggling through, there's stuff that's probably posted in the wrong place. Cause
Yeah, I
there's
hear you.
there's
Some-
zero,
some-
$0 item lines with money against them and stuff like that.
No.
Yeah.
So that's a good point though, Steve, but on our goals list, and it's not necessarily our goal, but it would be nice not to have to, because what the budget committee does on a regular basis is we are the audit firm for
Yeah.
the transaction entries, which we really should not be. That should absolutely not be that way. It should be some sort of dual control going on in your office, Jeremy, where on a month-over-month basis, somebody goes back through and just looks through all the transactions and looks for, you know, red flags like that and says, okay, this can't be right because we've overspent that budget line by 200% or something.
Zero, you can't charge anything.
And,
Oh,
or
right,
the zero,
it's
and you
zero,
can't put anything
right.
in there, so, you know, just little things like that. It would be nice to adopt a process within the selectman's office to catch that, so that when we're going into the budget season, we're not doing this, what Steve was doing. He's
Yeah.
basically looking at him going, what's going on here?
Right.
I wasn't looking for that, I was just looking at
It
something.
jumps
Yeah, we
out.
like Steve's free labor.
Well,
No, but then
But this is the
then it
kind of-
throws things off, I mean, if things are going into the right account and, you know, we haven't appropriated any funds, if there's a zero, that should be like a signal that, oops, we're putting something here that shouldn't be going here.
What would be nice is if we could put this kind of thing into a requirements document and then feed them to me and I'll see if there's something I can do with it.
okay,
I'm trying to design a database here, looking at stuff, and it helps to know what we wanna do.
how are you building the database? Are you getting it from this report? Are you able to
Yeah, yeah.
transfer that in?
Yep.
No shit, good for you.
Wow,
That's good, cause it is
I thought
hard
you were
to.
cutting back.
He's shifting his priorities.
It's hard to do the delimitation
Focus.
on this report, cause then it
Yeah.
comes out, it's, if you get it exported in Excel, it's just, it doesn't come out right, and
Well,
so.
the trick is to take the PDF and then do an online PDF, the spreadsheet things, and then it comes out usable.
Okay.
Alright, I hope you guys are ready to give me the weekend for this technology grant or something.
Yeah.
I'm already lost too, so.
Alright, okay, alright.
But the question comes in is if you wanna actually look at actuals, they need to be done on a regular basis. So you can do percentage, you know, what happened in January, we need like a report at the end of January, February, that kind of thing.
So can we add that to the list of reports that Sarah puts out? So the budget committee gets the full budget once a month. You know, the departments get
But
a
it needs to be
budget
on
once a month.
a consistent day, like the first day of the month or the last.
Right, as of.
As of.
As
Doesn't
of
have to
the,
be
as
on
of the
that
last
day.
day of the month, that's how I would do it, and because the departments get them on a monthly basis, or I don't know how regularly they're getting them, but that's what they're supposed to, and if the budget committee just got a full budget on a monthly basis, that'd be slick.
Yeah.
That would serve your purpose, right, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, this report has a period expendables and a current year.
Yes,
Okay? And basically, they're the same all the time because the period is set to the full year.
mhm.
So just changing that would probably help.
Boy, we are nerds.
Well,
Do you need me to go back and do month by month
Right.
now, or is it too late, not worry about it? It's not that hard.
Not important right now, I'm working on design stuff here,
If you want
so.
me to, let me know, we're getting leads.
And one of these days, I'm gonna have some time, I'm gonna come and sit with you, I'm gonna look and see what
I
reports.
already warned Sarah, so she knows it's coming at some point.
Oh, you're no fun.
Well,
Okay, so that's the end of our budget questions for the moment.
So now,
Yeah,
you
Okay,
want,
next
you
meeting?
want year-to-date once a month on the same
same day.
time period, and we want revenue
Yeah, revenues would be lovely.
for allowance.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what Steve was saying there is in that year-to-date report, you would set the parameters for the, period expenditures for only that month. Is that right, Steve?
Yes.
Yeah. So you'd still have a year-to-date number on there, but you would have just the
How much
expenditures for that
happened this
month.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty awesome, okay.
Cause you wanna be able to
Yeah,
build it up over, you know, pull that column, dump it in the database, now you can look at where it went wrong.
So if you got it June first, say,
okay,
set to May.
for the month of May,
Yep.
we get our
Whatever
June
month it's
first.
finished.
Yeah, your year-to-date as of date would be May 31st, and your period, parameters would be May 1st through May 31st. That's how you would set it.
And the good news is that you can go back and do this. You know, it's not like, well, we missed a date, we can't do it.
Right.
See, I would be flipping through a pencil and paper book doing that.
No.
Alright, well, I'm trying.
There's probably
Oh my god,
recording
that's
of
what I
that
grew up
process.
I've seen them. When I
I
was,
can
when I was
work
8,
in
I
the,
remember that.
yes, I used to do cash disbursement sheets.
Oh,
Alright.
that's not it.
I know, way out there. Alright, any old business? Everybody look away? Any public comment?
No public.
No public
When's the
presence?
next meeting?
He's quiet.
Alright,
Schedule the next meeting.
oh, schedule the next meeting,
Yep.
okay. Should we go in a month?
So after July 7th, I'm not available.
What are we gonna do?
Gone
The
forever?
budget committee has to end?
Yeah, like, just starting July 7th, I'm never available
Moving out
again.
of town.
Yeah, yeah,
Sounds like a
I'm
plan.
unavailable for. I
I'm
got
gonna need
couple
more than a
things
month.
It's hunting season, isn't it?
No, not yet.
That's what I
That
figured,
plays,
so.
that plays a role too.
That's a
Okay,
good
yeah, it
call.
does.
Yeah.
Alright, so after July 17th, oh, well, we're not,
But before that would be better.
Well, that's the 4th.
no, we're not doing the 4th. Oh, good lord, do we wanna meet on the 30th? I mean, do we think we can figure out the 10%?
I think so, absolutely. And that, because we really have to,
Okay.
because we,
Yes.
otherwise we're not, just not gonna give department heads enough time
You're right.
to get it done.
Alright, so June
Okay.
30th,
I think that will work.
6 o'clock.
I might be alive then. That's the first day of summer camp.
Oh.
There's
way
60
out.
kids down
Yeah,
there.
that's,
Well,
that's a good
You
point.
can come with coffee.
I probably don't have coffee.
I'm gonna have him too, so, yeah.
Well, Tristan can come and run services
I'm
online.
tired of
Is
the
he still
table
okay?
game.
Under the table.
Yeah, I'm tired of the table game.
It's a Monday.
It's a Monday.
10-4.
This room is pretty safe on Monday.
Oh, right, that's right, can we have this room on Monday?
I didn't see any bookings for Monday's period, so,
Alright,
because the library's closed, so.
okay,
Are you gonna add us to the calendar?
I will.
alright,
Excellent.
thank you.
That's
6
good.
o'clock again?
Put that in your
Library
phone.
trustee.
Here, bye-bye.
Yeah.
Alright, so, what do I say, are we adjourning? Oh, I'll take a motion to adjourn, is that right?
I'll move that we adjourn this meeting at 7:28 PM.
And me too.
That's a second. That's Al's version of a second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any
That was a
abstentions?
unique second, I
Alright,
like
motion
that.
is passed.
Alright.